Could I invite you to take your seat so we can get down to work in the next 3 minutes? Thank you.
Yeah. Bonjour.
Good morning. I would suggest that we begin our meeting. Please take your seats. We are going to be working in plenary today. And we have 8 agenda items to tackle this morning. We're going to begin with item 9, cooperation with the Global Strategy for Plant Conservation. I'm going to ask the Vice Chair of the Plants Committee to introduce PC 27 Doc 9. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. PC 27 Doc 9 on cooperation with the Global Strategy for Plant Conservation was co-developed by the representatives for Oceania and Europe. We would also like to thank the Chair of the CBD subsidiary body on technical and technological advice for his support in the preparation of the document. The Global Strategy for Plant Conservation initially arose as declaration by the International Botanic Gardens community to help raise awareness and consolidate global and local actions for plant conservation and since 2002 has become a specific international plant conservation-focused program of the CBD. Since this time, the strategy has provided impetus for concerted efforts to bridge the gaps in conservation effort, ensuring plants and plant species conservation has advocacy on the global biodiversity stage as a key component. Since the 13th meeting of the Plants Committee here in Geneva in 2003, CITES has recognised the importance of cooperating with the global strategy for plant conservation to support sustainable use and combat the illegal trade in plants. The global strategy for plant conservation will be considered as a dedicated complementary program for action to support the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, soon to be considered for adoption by the Conference of the Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity in November 2024. We note that while this CBD COP meeting has yet to take place later in the year, the GSPC actions have already been recommended by the subsidiary body on scientific, technical and technological advice for adoption by the CBD Conference of the Parties. We have this opportunity to align with the global plant conservation programs and contribute to the GBF targets. Failure to put the proposed strategy to CITES' 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties will mean the next opportunity to do so is likely to occur in 2029 at its 21st meeting. This will be 1 year before the proposed strategy is due to expire in 2030, preventing genuine CITES collaboration to occur. If the GSPC is adopted formally by the CBD COP later this year, it is possible that further edits to the text may be adopted. For this reason, we recommend an additional paragraph to those proposed in PC 27 Doc 9 to allow for incorporation and consideration of any additional text. It would read, 17. The Secretariat is invited to, little a, review the final adopted version of the Global Strategy for Plant Conservation arising from the CBD COP and, in consultation with the Chair of the Plants Committee, revise the text, if required, on the CITES complementary actions presented in Annex 1 for consideration by the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. And that is the end of the paragraph. We ask the Plants Committee to recommend the proposed updated Resolution 16.5 on cooperation with the Global Strategy for Plant Conservation to the Standing Committee for consideration by the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, with the addition of a new paragraph 17 little a, so that decisions 19.22 and 19.23 can be considered to be completed and we can collectively continue this important global collaboration for plant conservation. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie.
I would like to thank the representative of Oceania for that introduction to document PC 27 Doc 9. The floor is open to Plants Committee members for comments. The recommendations before us are in paragraph 16 of Doc 9, and one of the recommendations before us concerns revisions to Resolution Conf 16.5. So the floor is open to Plants Committee members.
Pas de demande de parole.
I see no requests for the floor. North America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The North American region wishes to thank the representatives from Oceania and Europe for this document. Our region generally agrees with the draft decisions to Resolution Conf 16.5 to include the voluntary complementary actions to the GSPC in alignment to the targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework as proposed by the 25th meeting of the SBSTA of the Convention of Biological Diversity. Regarding the annex, we have the following comments. For consistency, the title of the annex should be List of Potential CITES Activities and Products and their contribution to the objectives, targets, and complementary voluntary actions of the Global Strategy for Plant Conservation. We would like to request not to delete the second table at the end of the annex, which contains GSPC targets and CITES potential contributions. In particular, Target 11, stating that no species of wild flora endangered by international trade. One of the main links between GSPC and CITES, sorry, that quote that I just read is one of the main links between GSPC and CITES. Lastly, taking into account that the CITES Forest Compendium is linked to the work under the interdisciplinary study on CITES and forests and the implementation of Decision 19.34, which are still ongoing, and said compendium would need to be updated soon, we would like to suggest removing said reference in paragraph 2A of the draft revisions to the resolution. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie.
Thank you to the representative of North America. I now give the floor to the representative of Oceania. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank my colleague from the North America region for his contributions to this item. I just think possibly a point of clarification. The first table in the annex is the updated complementary actions that the Global Strategy for Plant Conservation is proposing will be adopted by the CBD COP. And it is under Target 5 of the Montreal Biodiversity Framework that will now focus on international sustainable plant and animal trade. Target 11 in the table that has been proposed for deletion refers to the previous global strategy for plant conservation targets from 2010 to 2020. So if my colleague is amenable to that, then I would suggest we delete the previous table, which is about the targets that ceased in 2020, and recognise the link between GSPC and CITES under Target 5 of the new framework. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you to the representative of Oceania. Mexico has requested the floor. Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the representative of Oceania for his comments. The table refers to the CBD targets, and they are different from those of the GSPC. So I think both should be maintained. In the end, we're talking about what we're doing as CITES to contribute to reaching the targets of the GSPC. What's going to be happening in the CBD in October, November has to do with complementary actions in the World Biodiversity Framework and its targets. In other words, we can keep CITES' original position which has to do with Target 11 of the strategy, in order to ensure there are no threats from international trade. So we want to maintain that, but we would also be keeping additional complementary targets. This is we're not sure exactly what the wording is going to be doing, and I'm going to be checking with CBD, but I think it's 2330, and we're going to say that we support their targets, their objectives, and their supplementary targets. That is why North America would like us to keep the final table, so that we are keeping with the strategy, the targets of the strategy, as well as CBDs. Thank you.
Merci pour.
I would like to thank you for that, North America. Would anyone else like to take the floor? I'm turning now to the observers. Botanical Gardens International, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Botanic Gardens Conservation International is the secretariat for the Global Partnership for Plant Conservation, who are responsible for the development and maintenance of the global strategy for plant conservation, working together with the CBD Secretariat. I would like to thank the regional representatives of Oceania and Europe for submission of document PC 27 Doc 9. And just to explain a bit further on the complementary actions, there are currently 42 complementary actions aligned with the 23 Global Biodiversity Framework targets. They are numbered to match the Global Biodiversity Framework targets. Of particular relevance to CITES are Action 5A on sustainable harvesting and 5B for trade in plants. I'd also like to point out, though, that there are several other GSPC complementary actions that involve sustainable trade in plant species. These are Action 10A on sustainable management of production land, which does include forestry and plantations and assisted production. 15A on sustainable practices in plant use, and 15B, the promotion and support of the development of best practices for monitoring and evaluation of sustainable plant use and production, which relates to sustainable supply chains. Once again, something that we work on in CITES. The GSPC has played an important role in the delivery of plant conservation and has enabled global botanic garden community and CITES parties to secure funding for this work, to share resources and build capacity. And as indicated in the table to the resolution in PC Doc 9, there are many CITES activities and products which contribute to the achievement of the GSPC and ultimately the Global Biodiversity Framework targets for plant species. In conclusion, I would like to encourage the Plants Committee to support the recommendations made in Doc 9 and the addition of the new paragraph 17 small a. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Merci.
Thank you for that statement. Would anyone else like to take the floor? That does not seem to be the case. I have a question for you. Do you agree with the proposals that have just been made by those who have taken the floor? But before putting that question to you, I would like to ask the North America representative for some clarification with respect to the deletion of deletions in Resolution 16.5. What exactly is it that you would like to see deleted from paragraph 2A?
représentant de la région Amérique du Nord.
North America, you have the floor.
Chair, I'm sorry, I will need a minute or two. Thank you.
Il n'y a pas de souci.
Oh, okay. The text we are suggesting to remove from paragraph 2A is the text near the end of the paragraph that reads, "and the CITES Forest Compendium."
Okay. Merci pour cette précision.
Thank you for that clarification. Peru has the floor. Thank you, Madam, for giving me the floor. We've requested the floor to make a brief comment. We would like to pay tribute to the high quality of the work done with respect to the targets of the global strategy for plant conservation and the complementary contributions that CITES can make, and we would therefore support the updating of Resolution 16.5. Thank you.
Merci, Pérou.
Thank you, Peru. I don't see any other requests for the floor. It seems to me that the committee decision is the following. The committee accepts the complementary voluntary activities being proposed by the body to provide complementary actions to take place between now and 2030 in the context of the global strategy for plant conservation, and that'll be known as the global strategy for plant conservation. That's in little a. Then in B, the idea is to with respect to Resolution Conf 16.5 to be adopted as amended in this session, and to present the document and propose further amendments to the Standing Committee, and to agree to the additional language that was proposed by the representative of Oceania. Could I ask if you can go along with this? I see agreement, which I think means that we can move on to the next agenda item.
Merci.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is CITES and Forests, PC 27, Doc 12, which will be presented by the Secretariat. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document PC 27, Doc 12 provides an update on the implementation of decisions 19.32 to 19.34 on CITES and forests, and provides a status update on the interdisciplinary study to assist decision-making processes on the future of any initiative relating to CITES and forests, the study which has been initiated as of April this year. Through an open call for proposals, the Secretariat identified CONABIO as the implementing partner to support the development of the study, which was financed through the contribution of the European Union. The Secretariat is grateful for the support provided. A brief preview of the approach and methodology of the study was presented yesterday at a side event on this topic. In paragraphs 9 and 10, the Secretariat invites the Plants Committee to provide its scientific or technical advice on the preliminary findings of the study, which will be circulated to the members by November 2024, noting that at this time the study is in its early stages. With the feedback received at that time, the Secretariat will then finalize a report and present it for consideration of the Standing Committee at SC 78, including reflections on the status of the implementation of decisions 19.32 and 19.34. Madam Chair, the Plans Committee is invited to provide feedback on the progress reported on the implementation of decision 19.32 and to consider the proposed approach reflected in paragraphs 9 and 10 of the document to allow the members of the Plans Committee sufficient time for their scientific and technical advice on any preliminary results of the study available ahead of the next meeting of the Standing Committee. Finally, Madam Chair, I would like to invite you to allow CONABIO to provide a brief update of the status of the project as of today. Thank you, Chair.
Merci, le secrétaire.
I thank the Secretariat for this introduction, and as requested, I shall give the floor to CONABIO to provide us with an update on the status of the project. So I give the floor to the representative of Mexico.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of CONABIO, the Secretariat's implementing partner to conduct the interdisciplinary study. We just began activities and as I hope you all heard during the site event presentation yesterday, we are following the revised terms of reference as agreed by the 26 meetings of the Plants Committee. Then we will conduct 3 activities and present 3 outputs. We have started on activity 1.1 to map the intersections between CITES' strategic vision and the global forest commitments. For this, we are considering the general mandates, objectives, goals, and when possible, indicators. This will result in a comparative matrix with identified complementarities and duplications regarding CITES' work on forest and tree species. This matrix will also provide information for the strategic analysis to illustrate potential scenarios to facilitate the Standing Committee decision-making and as a basis for other project activities. For activities 1.2 and 1.3, we will first define the components or actions commonly considered to contribute to conservation and sustainable use, such as information, protection, recovery, restoration, sustainable harvest and exports, capacity building, awareness, and among others. Then, we will analyze how CITES implementation and its projects have applied said actions to infer that they have made such contributions through a second matrix. Among the items to be reviewed are the different CITES processes, like non-determined findings, review significant trade, and projects with the CITES Tree Species Program, among many others. We will also identify and compile challenges and opportunities for CITES implementation on forests and tree species, provide inputs for addressing gaps, and available or additional recommendations. For activity 2, another comparative matrix will be developed to intersect results between linkages between CITES and other global forest commitments, and how CITES contributes to the conservation and sustainable use. This will help define the scope of any initiative, program, or resolution on CITES and forests that promotes CITES implementation and contributes to the global forest commitments. To this end, we will of course consider discussions of PC25, COP19, and PC26 on these matters. Finally, in consultation with the Secretariat, we will develop an executive summary and an extensive report which will serve as the basis for the reports to the plants and the standing committees in accordance with decisions 1933 and 34. The interdisciplinary study will also provide elements to guide other initiatives relevant to tree species and forests, such as the CTSP and the future work of CITES on the matter, with the aim of enhancing the legal, sustainable, and traceable trade. Madam Chair, we consider that CITES implementation on tree species can serve as umbrella for conservation and sustainable use of forests while maintaining ecosystem functions and services. Fulfilling CITES' mission to sustainable management and trade, which benefits from inclusive participatory planning processes, is key to contribute to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and other forestry mandates. We look forward to the Plants Committee's feedback. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je remercie.
I thank the representative of Mexico for this important information. And I turn to members of the Plants Committee to hear any comments on the progress made in the implementation of decisions 1932 and 34. I now give the floor to the representative of the Central, South America and the Caribbean region.
Sí, muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, we would like to welcome the progress made by the Secretariat in the application of decisions 19.32, and we agree that taking into account the integrated nature and scope of the study, it's important that we should be able to provide scientific and technical advice on the preliminary conclusions before the report is presented to the Standing Committee at its 78th meeting. So we are in agreement with the approach proposed by the Secretariat in paragraphs 9 and 10 of our document. Thank you.
Merci à la représentante.
I thank the representative of Central, South America and the Caribbean, and I now open the floor to the representative of the Africa region.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing us to comment on Agenda PC 27.12, but also we thank the Secretariat for preparation of the document. We would like to comment on Para 10 of the tabled agenda that Africa region will provide scientific advice on the preliminary findings to the prepared document for reporting to the Standing Committee at its 78th meeting in 2025. But also, Madam Chair, with regards to Para 7, Section A, Part 2, we would also like the study to cover issues of livelihoods along value chains for selected forest products, because we understand that CITES has been a good contribution on its conservation, but also forest use are well known. So we have some issues on livelihoods, which we needed to CITES to consider that it has some contribution on those. So if we would also capture some issues on livelihoods, would also be of potential to report it to the Standing Committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je remercie
I thank the representative of the Africa region who has requested that we add a reference to a study of livelihoods to this work. And I'd like to hear if there's agreement with that proposal. So I give the floor to you.
Je ne vois pas de...
I do not see any request for the floor. Do we have any observer parties or observers who wish to speak to the subject?
Les États-Unis, vous avez...
USA, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regard to the suggestion of adding an additional element to the terms of reference for the interdisciplinary study, we would just note that it was our understanding that those terms of reference were adopted at PC 26, and so they've already been agreed. So we're not sure if it's appropriate to include additional elements in those TORs at this point. Thank you.
Merci à la représentante.
I thank the representative of the USA. I saw on my list that Brazil had requested the floor. Would you like to take the floor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It wouldn't be in reaction to the Africa proposal, which we are discussing internally, but regarding the document itself. Thank you.
Oui, Brésil, vous pouvez...
Yes, Brazil, you may take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to extend our gratitude to the Secretariat and CONABI for providing this comprehensive update on the approach and methodology of the study. Brazil has consistently shared the opinion that CITES programs and policies involving forests should prioritize the conservation of species endangered by international trade, ensuring alignment with the mandates and objectives of the Convention. Moreover, we question the exclusive focus on tree species, as this approach offers an incomplete perspective of the intricate forest ecosystems, which include a diverse range of flora and fauna species. We appreciate the opportunity to offer scientific and technical input to this study, and we look forward to engaging in the discussion of its preliminary findings before its submission to the 7th meeting of the Standing Committee. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup à la...
I thank the representative of Brazil. Do we have any further request for the floor from observers? I see Canada on my list. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada is eager to provide advice on the preliminary results of the study. We suggest that a notification could also be issued on this item so parties will be able to share their views for consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie le Canada.
I thank Canada. The list is open to observers.
Nous avons la région...
We have Europe region.
Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm sorry to take the floor again or so late. We were just discussing the same topic that the US brought up, that if we agreed on the terms of reference at the last Plants Committee, if it's right to, or can we reopen this and can there add it more? We are not sure about that. Could you give us some feedback? Thank you.
Yes, I understand. I have the Asia region and requesting the floor, then we'll come back to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, if the procedures allow us for the addition for such an important issue, the element, we support the African proposal to, add this atom into the whole study. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie.
I thank the Asia region.
Je donne la parole.
I will give the floor to the Secretariat so they can provide some further clarification. You have the floor, Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. The intention of the document is mostly to outline what will be the steps to follow, noting that at this stage there's, since the study is just in its early stage.
We have lost the sound. The interpreters would inform you we cannot hear the Secretariat. The interpreters inform me we seem to have lost the sound. There is still no sound.
The interpreter's costs, our costs, all of our salaries. Is that the technician?
They don't seem to be in a position. Going really slow this morning.
This is the interpreters. Can you hear the interpreters?
Yes, we hear you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it works now. Seems to be working.
Ok, merci. Donc nous allons reprendre.
Thank you. Let's resume then. The Secretariat has the floor for purposes of clarification.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me? Is it working? Yeah, okay. A clarification on what we are seeking with this document. Since we don't have yet any concrete results of the study, it's in the early stages, but we will have a preliminary outputs well in time for the Plans Committee to consider it before the Standing Committee. So the idea is mostly to seek your views on the steps to follow. And with regards to the scope of the terms of reference, yes, at the last meeting of the Plans Committee, the scope and the final terms were agreed. As you can find in the summary record of PC 26 in Annex 2. And I would just like to reassure from the previous interventions, I believe from the Africa representative and also perhaps Asia, just to reassure that the matters relating to livelihoods were part of the scope agreed by the Plans Committee. So this is definitely going to be considered, but also to reassure that we will not broaden the scope beyond anything that was agreed at the last meeting of the Plans Committee. And that is reflected in the agreement that was formalized in April earlier this year. So I hope this provides clarification. Thank you.
Merci pour le secrétariat pour cette.
I thank the Secretariat for that contribution, and I think it's now time to conclude on this item, PC 27, Doc 12, as follows. The Plants Committee has commented on the progress made in the implementation of Decision 19.32 and has considered the proposed approach reflected in paragraphs 9 and 10 to provide the opportunity to members of the Plants Committee to provide scientific or technical advice on the preliminary results of the study ahead of the 78th meeting of the Standing Committee. Thank you.
Le point suivant.
The next item on our agenda is the CITES tree species, which is going to be introduced by the Secretariat and is in document PC 27, Doc 14. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and participants. The present document, PC 27, Doc 14, summarizes the progress made on the implementation of decisions 1949 and 1950 on CITES Tree Species Program. The Secretariat is grateful for the generous financial contribution from the European Union and Germany towards the CITES Tree Species Project activities for the next 5 years. These funds will allow support to parties in their implementation of the CITES listings of trees, enhancing CITES compliance, and sustainable forest management. This is the first time we have secured financial support from the International Climate Initiative. It provides an opportunity for us to demonstrate how well-regulated, legal, and sustainable trade in trees can be beneficial for climate change, economy, and livelihoods. The project will pioneer in better articulating the Convention's contribution to mitigating forest degradation and deforestation through sustainable harvesting of trees, which could potentially raise the profile of CITES in the global climate fora, as well as in the national climate finance discussions. In this regard, a side event entitled CITES and Climate Change was held in the margins of the United Nations Environment Assembly in March this year, and outreach materials have also been developed. A call for preliminary expressions of interest was also launched through the notification to parties number 2024-060. While this preliminary call does not guarantee or limit the opportunity for any party to receive the project funds, it has allowed the Secretariat to better understand the range of activities that the parties might expect from this project. The actual call for proposals is planned for later this year. The CITES Secretariat has also reached out to the International Tropical Timber Organization, as well as other members of the Collaborative Partnerships on Forests and experts in biodiversity impact financing for cooperation. These partnerships will support the projects and help multiply our voice in promoting CITES as a key actor in forest governance and mitigation of forest degradation and deforestation. To summarize, decisions 1949 and 1950, paragraphs A and C, are considered to be successfully implemented, with decision 1950, paragraph B remaining. The Plants Committee is invited to request the Secretariat to renew this as a standalone decision, ensuring continued discussion on the long-term capacity building framework for trees. Thank you, Chair.
Merci. I thank the Secretariat for this presentation. So you have just heard the recommendations that are made and presented in paragraph 10 of document PC27 Doc 14. So I invite members of the Plants Committee to take the floor for any comments they may have.
La région Amérique du Nord, vous avez...
North America region, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The North American region wishes to echo the gratitude expressed by the Secretariat to the scientific and management authorities of Germany for facilitating this funding opportunity. We would like to inquire about the secondary objectives being advanced by this program, namely improving forest governance, contributing to reducing deforestation, and addressing climate change. We welcome positive secondary effects from the CITES Tree Species Project, Sustainable Trade and Forest Governance. However, it is important that CITES and its programs continue to focus on furthering the Convention goals of legal, sustainable, and traceable trade in commercially significant species, with assessment of non-detriment focused at the species level, which may lead to benefits at the ecosystem level. We support the proposal to renew the decision, assessing the potential for this program to become permanent. As discussed in document 12, recalling that an interdisciplinary study on CITES and forests is currently underway, we recommend waiting until the study has been completed before assessing this program and any potential changes. The North American region wishes to better understand whether and how designating this program permanent will influence the program mandate or operations. We would also like to inquire about the process by which any potential program changes will be made, and would like to include a consultation role for the Plants Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Merci.
I would like to thank the representative of North America. I will now give the floor to the Secretariat so that they can give you the clarifications requested. The Secretariat has the floor.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the first question about what the secondary objectives will affect the mandate of the convention, I would like to just reiterate and confirm that the project is still squarely focusing on the delivery of the implementation of the convention, which is to ensure that the parties are going to be given funds and support so that their capacity to be able to trade in trees in legal, sustainable, and traceable manner will be pursued. The main thrust in terms of the second objective will be used to see how the outcomes of parties being able to trade sustainably and legally can be measured in ways that they could actually calculate to the climate discussions, or that the parties will be able to explain the linkage between CITES implementation and climate change in a more confident and competent manner. So we are not going to make any of the climate change discussions as a driver, for example, for selection of projects per se, but it'll be on how do we articulate the outcomes better to the climate community. Thank you.
Merci, Secrétaire.
I would like to thank the Secretariat. I now give the floor to the representative of Central and South America and the Caribbean. Thank you, Madam. I would like, first of all, to thank the CITES Secretariat for the hard work done with respect to the implementation of tree species, the tree species program. This has meant significant headway for countries in the region. We would also like to acknowledge efforts made by the EU and Germany through climate-based initiative in order to launch cooperation programs which help us work towards sustainable development and forestry governance. I would also like to pay tribute to work done by organizations like the ITTO. They give support to us with respect to the CITES Tree Species Program. On Para B of 1950, Madam, we think that the Tree Species Program should be a permanent program which could help with the implementation of programs that ensure that tree species are protected. And this would be a way of actually showing what headway has been made by parties in this respect. Thank you, Madam. I would like to thank the representative of Central and South America and the Caribbean. I would now like to give the floor to the Oceania representative. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank the Secretariat for the document and express my appreciation for the financial contributions from the EU for bridging activities and to Germany for the funding for the programme. In particular, I would like to congratulate Germany and the Secretariat for expanding the geographic scope of the CITES Tree Species Programme to enable parties in more regions, including Oceania, have the opportunity to access capacity building funding and support for sustainable management of CITES listed tree species. Thank you, Chair.
Merci.
I would like to thank Oceania, and I now give the floor to the Africa representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us a chance to comment or to contribute on this agenda. We would like to thank the Secretariat for preparation of this document, but also we would like to thank and appreciate the financial support from EU and the German that have led to implementation of various projects on forest conservation in Africa. We also, Madam Chair, will request for widening the support that will also contribute to development of NDFs in various countries in Africa. The program also could focus on capacity building, on timber identification technologies, because we know that Africa has various timber species which has been having a challenge on identification during trade. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je remercie.
I would like to thank the Africa representative. The floor is now open to observer parties. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to echo the intervention of our colleague from the Central and South America and the Caribbean region. Brazil attributes great importance to the CITES Species Program, and we would like to see it transition into a permanent program. In response to notification 2024/060 of interest related to 5 projects that we would wish to be developed in Brazil. In this context, we kindly request clarification from the Secretariat on how will the projects be selected and based on which criteria. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Brazil. The United States has the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As other representatives and parties have noted this morning, we're pleased that additional funding has been received to continue the CITES Tree Species Program and look forward to working with the Secretariat and others to make it a successful program. As with the previous version of the CITES Tree Species Program, we would urge that the Secretariat convene an advisory committee to assist in reviewing documents, reviewing proposals, and guiding the implementation of the program. And then we would also note that from the United States, we look forward to continuing to support CITES tree species capacity building and work through our contribution to the biennial work program of the International Tropical Timber Organization. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie.
I would like to thank the representative of the United States. I now give the floor to Peru. Thank you, Madam. Peru would like to thank the Secretariat for all of the hard work done, as well as for partners' support, which has allowed us to develop the CITES Tree Species Program. This program has allowed Peru to meet a number of its commitments, including working with cedar and mahogany. We would also like to talk about what has been done since COP19. We have been doing everything to strengthen our work with respect to our work on different tree species that are Appendix 2 listed. The National Forestry and Wildlife Service, which is the CITES administrative authority, in 2023 developed a plan in the context of which it has managed to find opportunities for exchange of information and views to have private-public sector cooperation with respect to forest species. They have also found ways of developing appropriate tree cutting diameters and working to protect different species. This with respect to ways of actually evaluating the situation in those range areas in the different states. We have developed workshops, materials, and courses in order to help those who work in these fields forest rangers, students, and others. All of this has served to enhance their understanding of CITES, and we've also been able to stress the need of sustainable development and a full botanical and zoological understanding of different species. We have developed different courses and provided work on identification of different species. We have also found ways of working with the processing centers and different centers that hold samples, and we are in a position to well understand our wildlife, and we ensure that we have information from the field so that we better understand our species. We've also strengthened our national forestry and wildlife database, and we have found ways of sharing experience and knowledge to ensure that these species our Appendix 2 listed species are well managed. All of this serves to indicate our full commitment to our CITES obligations with respect to conservation and the sustainable use of these species. And we would also like to say that we would certainly like to see the CITES tree species program to continue, and that will help us to work to protect all of our species, which certainly help us preserve our forests and use them sustainably. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I would like to thank Peru. I have had a request from seat 45. I'm not sure who is requesting the floor. Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Kenya is happy that the Secretariat has reported the progress made in the implementation of the Decision 1949-1950, and noting that Decision 1950, some elements are remaining pending for implementation. Chair, we consider that implementation of the CITES tree species program has been very central to effective implementation of CITES with respect to regulation of trade in tree species listed under CITES. And through this program, parties have been able to build capacity for undertaking non-detriment finding studies and improve implementation of Article 4 of the Convention. Chair, we are grateful to EU for supporting with funding for implementation of this program, which Kenya and other parties in Africa and others has benefited from. And we echo the statement by our representative from Africa, acknowledging this great support that we have received as a region and as individual parties. We are also happy that with the reporting that Germany, through the International Climate Initiative, has committed to avail further funding for parties to access for implementation of the program and the project Sustainable Trade and Forest Governance. Madam Chair, at Standing Committee 77, Kenya strongly supported the recommendation to have additional funding or extension of the program so that we parties that require to improve on their capacity on undertaking non-detriment findings be supported to undertake that. And therefore, we would agree with the recommendations of the Secretariat and in this document. However, we would also request if you can add an additional D under the recommendation that parties, although the document says further notifications will be given to the parties about the new funding, it will be good that there is continuous communication to the parties that there is funding available and it's possible to access that funding to implement the CTS program. We consider this because under the agenda on access to funding and the capacity building, we need to present this information. Not every party, not everyone would know that opportunity for this funding, and it would be good that that communication keep on being given to the parties so that we can access. We note that already a call for expression of interest has been made, and perhaps Kenya has already made that expression, and we'll be looking forward to communication regarding the expressions that we have made and also made possible by other parties. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je remercie.
Thank you, Kenya. And I have made note of your suggestion for a small D in the recommendations. I would like to ask Plants Committee members if they would be happy to add this new recommendation, little d. I would also like to open the floor to observer parties and observers for any comments they might like to make. The floor is open.
Europe, vous avez la parole.
Europe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Would it be possible to read out again this recommendation, please?
Je me tourne vers.
Let me turn to Kenya. Could you please read your recommendation once again and go slowly so that parties and observers can take notes? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kenya is proposing that under recommendations, paragraph 10, we have a new recommendation, that is part D, that the Plants Committee is invited to communicate about, I don't know, I'll present just the language of the text, that parties are notified of the opportunity, the new funding opportunity under the International Climate Initiative by the government of Germany, so that they can access. It's already communicated in the document, but I think it would be good if it appeared as a recommendation of the Plants Committee to have the communication to the parties. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you, Kenya. It seemed to me that earlier you said the Plants Committee is invited to request the Secretariat to get constant information from parties on funding availability in the new phase of the CTSP. That, as I understand it, was what you first proposed. The Plants Committee is invited to request the Secretariat to send a notification to parties on the availability of funding for the new CTSP program, the new CTS program phase. Would that suit? We can also ensure that the Secretariat actually ensures that this proposal is put into the right kind of house wording. Could I suggest that the Secretariat find a new way of expressing the suggestion made by Kenya?
Je donne la parole au secrétariat.
The Secretariat has the floor, And perhaps while you have the floor, you could answer Brazil's question. That question had to do with eligibility in the context of the new program phase. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the Secretariat proposes the little paragraph D to say, to come from the chapeau, the Plants Committee is invited to, little d, request the Secretariat to continue informing the parties of the availability of funds under the new phase of the CITES tree species program. So little d reads, I'll repeat, request the Secretariat to continue informing the parties of the availability of funds under the new phase of the CTSP. With regard to the question about the selection criteria, we take note of the comments made on the floor on the criteria for the selection of the proposals, and we will communicate this to the parties in due course. Thank you.
Je vous remercie.
I would like to thank the Secretariat for that. You have heard the language proposed with respect to recommendation little d. The floor is open so that you can say whether or not you could agree with the addition of that recommendation, after which we can wrap up our consideration of this agenda item. I don't see any requests for the floor. SSN had requested the floor. You have the floor. Please go ahead. Thank you, Madam. We would first of all, like to thank the EU and Germany for their program funding, and we would also like to thank the ITTO for their work. SSN has one request of the Plants Committee. We would like to ensure that you have measures that don't put this program under the heading of the forest program, because we feel that the CTSP has a proven track record. The CITES and forest program is not yet finalized and has been somewhat controversial. We know that the CTSP has an inherent value to parties, and it is much more closely linked to the CITES program, which is unlike the CITES and forest program. We would like to have the CITES tree species program to become permanent, given its remarkable results from the very beginning. Thank you, Madam.
Merci, SSN.
Thank you, SSN. I would like to wrap up our consideration of PC 2714. I would like to propose the following. The Plants Committee took note of the comments in plenary. The Plants Committee agrees to the recommendations in paragraph 10 of document PC 27 Doc 14 as amended during the meeting. Can you agree? Thank you. We can now move on to the next agenda item.
Mexique, vous avez demandé la parole?
Mexico, had you requested the floor? Thank you, Madam. Just one question, if I may. We understand that the CTSP does have terms of reference and has an advisory committee. Are the terms of reference going to be updated with this new phase, and is the advisory committee makeup going to be changed as well? Thank you.
Nous avons eu des soucis.
We've had some, we're not quite sure that we got your question, Mexico. Could you please ask it again? Thank you, Madam. We had a question on the advisory committee to the CTSP. Currently, there are terms of reference on the CITES web page which talk about the makeup and role of the advisory committee to the CTSP. I'm asking whether those terms of reference are going to be updated in this new phase of the CTSP. Thank you.
Je donne donc la parole.
I would like to give the floor to the Secretariat so that they can answer your question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mexico. The terms of reference of the advisory committee and other information that you see on the website at the moment is from the previous project that has now ended. We are in the course of updating the website as well, since this is a project microsite. And we are also, at the same time, in the process of setting up now the equivalent committee in the current phase of the project. And we are still setting up the terms of reference as well as the website as well. Thank you.
Merci, Secrétaire.
Thank you, Secretariat. I think we can now move on to the introduction to PC 27 Doc 26 on Boswellia. This was submitted by the chair of the intersessional working group, that is to say, the representative of Europe. I give the representative of Europe the floor to introduce the document.
Thank you, Chair. At the 26th meeting of the Plants Committee in Geneva in June 2023, the Plants Committee considered documents 28.1 and document 28.2, highlighting that there are many Boswellia species found in international trade. Previously, at the 19th meeting of the Conference of Parties in Panama City, the Conference of Parties adopted decisions 19.241 and 19.242 on Boswellia trees, which directed the Secretariat in 19.241 to share a report on Boswellia trade found in Information Document COP19 INF10 Rev 1 with the Plants Committee, and Decision 19.242 directed to the Plants Committee to identify meetings or other venues and opportunities to collaborate or share information regarding harvest and management of Boswellia species, and B, to review the available information submitted to identify gaps in the knowledge identified in the document PC 25, Doc 25 on Boswellia trees to inform possible listing proposals and including consideration of appropriate annotations. Based on these documents and decisions of the Plants Committee 26, established an intersessional working group to specifically address Decision 19.24A and B. And this working group met on 3 separate occasions online during 2023 and 2024. With regard to Decision 19.242A, to identify meetings and other venues that might provide opportunities to collaborate, we had inputs from parties and NGOs as reported in the document, and a dedicated in-person range and stakeholder meeting was agreed by the group as the best way forward. With regard to Decision 19.242B, to review the available information submitted by the Secretariat to identify gaps in the knowledge to inform possible listings. Again, inputs were received from the Secretariat and parties in the intersessional working group as outlined in the document, and lots of updated technical and scientific information was provided on Boswellia species by the Royal Botanic Gardens Edinburgh to the group on a project supported by Switzerland, which is also set out here in this meeting in Information Document 8. Some highlights from our discussion highlighted the need for a dedicated HS custom code for Boswellia, which could help in providing global trade data, noting that the EU already record trade data for Boswellia species under NXT, and that trade data is available. Concerns about listing any Boswellia species were also raised from within the group, and a review of all the CITES documents to date by one of the parties highlighted that there does appear to be a level of understanding that several Boswellia species are indeed over-harvested and trade is not sustainable, and that several species do already meet the Appendix 2 listing criteria. However, the group also recognised that there had not been enough range state engagement in these discussions to allow full appraisal to inform the specific listing proposals, and that any discussion on annotations to accompany listings were premature at this stage. Our working group recommendations are set out in paragraph 18 of the document, and the Plants Committee is invited to note that decisions 19.241 and 19.242 have been implemented and can be deleted, and to consider our new draft decisions 20WW to 20ZZ agreed by consensus within the working group and contained in the annex to the present document. So that's what our working group would recommend, and to report these recommendations to the Conference of the Parties on Boswellia species. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Merci.
I thank the representative for Europe.
Merci à la représentante.
I thank the representative for Europe, and I now open the floor to other members of the Plants Committee for any comments you may wish to make. And bear in mind that we have a draft decision to adopt, and this draft decision is presented in the annex of the document PC 27, Doc 26. The floor is open. Europe, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to speak on behalf of Switzerland and would like to draw the attention to the INF Doc 8 concerning the study Switzerland funded. It's about conservation status, trade and threats to the genus Boswellia. I don't want to read the whole document, but I would like to draw the attention also to the frankincense resource portal. That's new and now available. It's not at all complete, and stakeholders are invited to provide data, information, suggestion and feedback to this inserted email address. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Je remercie la représentante.
I thank the Swiss representative for this information. Do we have any request for the floor on this document, document PC 27, Doc 26?
Canada, vous avez la...
Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada wishes to thank the Intersessional Working Group for the review and the suggestions related to the Boswellia tree species and potential implications for CITES. We agree that decisions 19.241 and 19.242 have been implemented. However, we wish to note concern for the activities proposed for the Secretariat. The scale of the undertaking will cause the Secretariat's already stretched time and resources to be diverted away from work related to the implementation of CITES for the growing number of already listed tree species, and towards proposed work on what is currently an unlisted species. We agree that there is value in being proactive to assess a possible listing proposal, but we suggest that it would be useful to explore how parties could support what is being proposed under draft decision 20.WW because we must be mindful of the resources of the Secretariat. Thank you, Chair.
Merci. Le Canada.
I thank the representative of Canada. I now give the floor to the USA.
Thank you. The United States wishes to express its support for the 4 draft decisions. We were an active participant in the working group, and we feel this work should continue. We recognize that they are not currently listed. However, there is an growing emphasis on trees, and we feel that this species does face conservation threats of unsustainable use, and perhaps having such one of the decisions calls for a workshop among the range states can also address some of the best practices. It isn't just about listing the species, but perhaps if we develop best practice harvest guidance for these species, we could prevent future listings. So we would suggest these decisions go forward. Thank you.
Merci à la représentante des États-Unis.
I thank the representative of the United States. India has the floor.
With the permission of Madam Chair, 2 species of Boswellia are found in India. One is Boswellia ovale-foliata, and other one is Boswellia serrata. This Boswellia serrata has a very wide distribution in India and is found in 17 states of India. It is under extensive cultivation in several states. It is being propagated by the vegetative means such as root and shoot cuttings. Tissue culture techniques are being developed for a mass multiplication. Boswellia serrata does not meet the criteria for CITES listing that we suggest, and that any consideration of genus level listing is premature based on the information available so far. Boswellia ovale-foliata is an endemic to India, assessed as vulnerable, which is restricted to specific locations in the state of Andhra Pradesh only. This species may meet the criteria for listing on Appendix 2. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Merci, Alain.
Thank you, India. I now give the floor to the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair. The United Kingdom thanks the Chair and the members of the working group for this update. We support the recommendations proposed with a suggestion for a minor edit on the draft decisions directed to the Secretariat in an effort to reduce the workloads of the Secretariat and hopefully partly addressing concerns raised by Canada, but maintain the importance of the progress made on Decision 19.242 and identifying opportunities to collaborate or share information regarding harvest and management of these species. Within Draft Decision 20.WW directed to the Secretariat, we propose to move paragraph C and propose it under paragraph A as a new paragraph V under 20.WW and remove participate in suitable meetings of the gums and resins and replace with invite and keep the remaining text to read invite industries relevant to the trade in Boswellia species, such as the IFRA International Fragrance Association and IFEAT International Federation of Essential Oils and Aroma Trades, to strengthen stakeholder engagement in CITES processes and ongoing efforts to improve the conservation and management of Boswellia species. Thank you.
Merci à la représentante.
I thank the United Kingdom representative. Secretariat, were you able to take note of the suggested changes?
Maintenant, je donne...
Now the floor is for Kenya. Kenya.
Thank you for this opportunity. Kenya actively participated in these Boswellia meetings, in the session meetings, and Kenya support all the proposals presented by this committee to this plant committee for consideration. Kenya is one of the range states where we have commercial utilization of the Boswellia species, mostly from the indigenous people in the northern rangelands. And we feel with the provision of appropriate data to enhance monitoring so that will promote, also contribute to livelihood and conservation. The proposal being presented, possibility of engaging, working closely with the private sector is quite welcome. And at one time, I know there is within the range state proposal, possibility of a range state hosting such a meeting on Boswellia. I remember Kenya saying, given a chance, opportunity, Kenya could host such a meeting to discuss and chart a way for effective conservation and utilization of the Boswellia species. Thank you very much.
Je remercie le Kenya.
Thank you, Kenya. I now give the floor to Botanical Garden International.
Thank you, Chair. We thank the Working Group for PC 27, Doc 26, and Switzerland for the update on the Info Doc 8. I'd also like to compliment our colleagues from the Royal Botanic Gardens Edinburgh for the work done thus far on Boswellia species. As part of BGCI's Global Tree Assessment Program, we can update the Plants Committee regarding the conservation assessment of certain Boswellia species. Currently, on the IUCN Red List, 13 species have been assessed, 4 are up to date, and 9 are out of date, being older than 10 years. We've assessed 10 species, including 7 reassessments from the island of Socotra, Yemen, and 1 from India. These have been assessed and reviewed and are awaiting publication on the IUCN Red List in 2025. All remaining species are still under assessment by the Royal Botanic Gardens Edinburgh, as noted in PC 27, InfDoc 8. Thank you, Chair.
Je vous remercie.
I thank you. I see no further request for the floor, so I shall give the floor to, I beg your pardon, we have Canada requesting the floor. You have the floor, Canada.
Thank you, Chair. Canada wanted to express agreement with the revisions proposed by the UK. Thank you.
Je remercie le Canada.
Thank you, Canada.
Donc, je donne la parole à Madame.
I give the floor to the Secretary General who would like to add some extra information. You have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very much the intersessional working group for their hard work, the chair and the members of the group for their hard work. However, the Secretariat also has some concerns about 20 WW, draft decision 20 WW, about the additional resources that might be needed. I wonder, and I thank Canada and the UK for trying to offer some solutions to this. However, there are some still perhaps issues here that even if we were to change little b to b5, there's still some issues here that about funding. So I wonder if it would just help overall to take care of this funding issue to put the Secretariat shall at the beginning subject to external funding in the overall of the decision, in the overall text of the decision, just to know that whenever something does require funding, like having a meeting, providing financial travel support, and even possibly compiling and presenting the information to the Plants Committee, that may be a large amount of work. We may have to hire somebody to be able to do this. It would be much better if I think if we put it overall that it is subject to external funding. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Secretary General. So we have heard this proposal to amend the draft decision on Boswellia, and in particular the draft decision 20WW. Do you have any further comments on the matter, or may I conclude on this item?
IWMC, vous avez la parole.
IWMC. Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just, on behalf of my organisation, like to strongly support the comments made by Canada, the United States of America, and the Secretary General of CITES. The role of the Secretariat of CITES is to implement the treaty and to concern itself with the species listed in the appendices. It has also become a habit in CITES to want to give the Secretariat the role of presenting the amendment proposals or to study the situation of species that are not listed. This is extremely important, but no doubt it puts extra strain on the resources of the Secretariat. I think there are sufficient governmental and non-governmental organizations, as well as states, that are interested in this type of issue that could take on the work to find out if it's necessary to list species or not. And if a decision is made to list them, then a proposal can be submitted. And at that point, the Secretariat can take on, with external financial assistance, if necessary, the proposals for these species. Thank you. I thank you. I now have a request from the Europe region. You have the floor.
Thank you, Secretariat. We're just discussing here on whether maybe aspects of this 20WW, such as the current paragraph C, which is now 5, that maybe the Secretariat would already be going to some of these meetings in its normal capacity, and maybe this would not require any additional funding, and also in liaison with World Customs Organization, that this also would be part of their current role, and that maybe we could separate the range state meeting and the funding for, the financial travel for support, separate to the duties already undertaken by the Secretariat, which may not require additional resourcing, if they could just consider that. Thank you.
Merci à la représentante de l'Europe.
I thank the representative of the Europe region.
Merci. Donc,
Thank you. So, in the light of what we have heard in the discussions, I think that when it comes to draft decision on Boswellia, the option that is arising most often in the discussions is to have the following wording. The Secretary, directed to the Secretariat, 20 WW, subject to external funding, comma, the Secretariat A organizes in consultation with the Plants Committee, and then Roman I, Roman II, Roman III, with the amendment proposed by the United Kingdom, which has received support from the plenary, and so on. We continue until E. So this wording seems to have the approval of all. Am I correct in thinking that?
je pense que non, la présidente a raison alors.
The chair is right then, it seems. So, thank you. We will conclude on this item in the following way. The Plants Committee notes that decisions 19.241 and 19.242 have been implemented and can be deleted. Adopts the draft decisions as amended in this meeting, and reports its recommendations to the Conference of the Parties. I think we can now conclude this item. Thank you.
Membres du comité pour les...
Members of the Plants Committee, we will now go on to the next item on the agenda, which is document PC 27, Doc 27, which is on rosewood tree species. The document shall be presented by the Secretariat. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document PC 27, Doc 27, refers to the progress in the implementation of Decision 19.243 on rosewood tree species. The document contains the report on the conservation and trade of CITES-listed rosewood tree species in Annex 2 of the document, and an executive summary as available in all 3 languages in Annex 1A, and an example of one of the fact sheets in Annex 1B, also available in all 3 languages, in this case for African rosewood as an example. Annex 3 contains the high, medium, and low priority list of CITES-listed rosewoods with a breakdown of the criteria that were met for this prioritization. The report was possible thanks to a partnership with Traffic and to the financial contribution of Switzerland. The Secretariat is grateful for this support. Earlier this week, in the side event on CITES Rosewoods, The Global Picture, the Secretariat presented in detail the main outputs of the project. With this, the Secretariat considers that pending any feedback that can come from this meeting, the study could be now considered finalized, and therefore decisions 19.43 and 19.44 can be considered completed. The Secretariat also notes that parties could benefit from a new set of follow-up decisions on rosewoods to continue on the outcomes and findings of the report, particularly for those rosewood tree species that were categorized as high and medium priority. To this effect, in paragraph 12 of the present document, we have included draft decisions. Madam Chair, having considered this, we would like to invite the Plants Committee to consider and provide feedback on the report contained in Annexes 1 to 3 to the document, to request the Secretariat to bring to the attention of the Standing Committee any relevant aspects of the report in the framework of the expedited application of Article 13 for West African rosewood, or Pterocarpus erinaceus, for all range states. To agree that decisions 19.43 to 19.244 have been implemented and recommend their deletion to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties, and to submit the draft decisions contained in paragraph 12 of the present document to the 20th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. With this background, Madam Chair, I would also like to invite you to allow traffic a very brief moment to provide an update of the highlights of the study. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie.
I thank the Secretariat for their introduction to this document and therefore invite Traffic to provide some additional information. Traffic, you have the floor.
Pouvez-vous demander la parole?
The floor is yours, Traffic.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Traffic would like to highlight some of the recommendations arising from this study, which we were pleased to conduct in partnership with the CITES Secretariat and in close collaboration with the lead of Module 10 of the updated NDF guidance materials for tree species. Traffic encourages range parties for rosewood tree species to use the fact sheets developed for the 13 species identified as high priority in the report as preliminary background information when developing their NDFs. These fact sheets bring together information on criteria that will be most useful to parties regardless of location. Traffic also notes that the sources collated for medium priority species can act as a useful reference point for parties completing NDFs for other rosewood tree species. Traffic also encourages parties exporting rosewood tree species to use the case studies of existing NDFs compiled in the report. These case studies provide a range of example approaches to data collection relevant to NDFs, such as forest inventories and calculation of quotas. Recommendations arising particularly for parties undergoing compliance procedures for rosewood tree species include prioritizing sampling areas from which the species is to be harvested and clarifying methodologies that can be replicated to assess future population trends. Parties are also encouraged to share any relevant data for species that other parties can use as proxy values in NDFs until their own harvest site data can be collected, such as on growth and mortality rates and conversion factors. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Je remercie Traffic pour cette...
I thank Traffic for their presentation, and I now give the floor to the members of the Plants Committee who wish to comment.
Région Amérique du Nord, vous avez la parole.
North America region, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The North American region would like to thank the Secretariat for their work on this issue and to thank Traffic for preparing this extensive and valuable report on the conservation and trade of CITES listed rosewood tree species. Since the report includes Kaya species in the Meliaceae family, of which 2 species are categorized as medium priority species and therefore included under the draft decisions for future work on rosewood species, we suggest future revisions to the report to consider changing the title of the report. Regarding the 3 draft decisions, 20.AA to 20.CC in the document, we suggest adding a new subparagraph to paragraph C of decision 20.AA, directed to the Secretariat as follows. Any revisions of the report, consider amending the title of the report to reflect the inclusion of CITES listed rosewood tree species not in the family Leguminosae. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie le représentant.
I would like to thank the North America representative, and the Secretariat has taken note of your proposal. I now give the floor to the representative of Africa. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Africa region would like also to thank the Secretariat for the preparation of a document. We also thank Traffic International for undertaking the study on conservation and trade of CITES listed rosewood tree species. We also appreciate and acknowledge financial contribution from Switzerland. Madam Chair, the findings in these case studies will contribute in development of various NDFs that are ahead of us in various rosewood range states in Africa. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je remercie le
I would like to thank the representative of Africa, and I now give the floor to the Europe representative.
Thank you, Chair. With regard to the title of the report, I think it would be important that we hold on to rosewood, but agree to the deletion of Leguminosae fabaceae in 20AA, little a. I would also urge, as the report is so useful and so good in the fact sheets, that I kind of fear that the usefulness will be lost for each species if it's not separated out, and that perhaps there could be a decision to place each fact sheet in a searchable way on maybe the CITES Tree Species Program website, somewhere where we can actually find the species and all the particular information about that species. And I think, yes, some sort of a hyperlink so that you don't have to go to the whole report, that you can find individual species and the information about them. Thank you.
merci à la
Thank you, representative of Europe. Are there any further requests for the floor? Observer parties, the floor is open. India, you have the floor.
With the permission of Madam Chair, according to the PC 27, document 27, annexure 3, page number 8, Dalvaria shishu has been considered as low priority species. No party stated that the species was affected by trade, high trade volumes from wild sources during 2017 to 2021, and the species was assessed as not globally threatened on the IUCN Red List of 2019-23. It is worth mentioning that Wing Chu and it all in 2023 developed a protocol in authenticating commercial products of some rosewood species using DNA barcoding, including Dalvaria shishu. India is having the opinion that Dalvaria shishu should be removed from the Appendix 2, as inclusion of this least concerned agroforestry species in Appendix 2 has a very high negative impact on livelihood of many communities who are involved in the cultivation and trade. Thank you, Madam Chair.
merci.
Thank you, India. Would anyone else like to take the floor? Observer parties? Observers?
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. We are going to wrap up our consideration of this document as follows. The Plants Committee, as the Secretariat, will ask for the Secretary to find out what the feedback is on this report and take it into account in the new edition of the report. That's for little a. B, request the Secretariat to bring to the attention of the Standing Committee any relevant aspect of the report to support the Standing Committee in its review of the expedited application of Article 13 for West African rosewood for all range states. Little c, agree that decisions 19243 and 19244 can be deleted, and D, submit the draft decisions as amended in session. These are the recommendations that we have, our concluding remarks on the discussion of document PC 27, document 27. Thank you.
Merci.
We are now going to consider document PC 2735 on annotation 15. I am going to give the floor to the Secretariat to introduce the document. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Document PC 27, Doc 35, relates to the progress on the study for annotation 15 on the effect of rosewood tree species of the genus Dalbergia and Giburtia in international trade, particularly of the exemptions contained in annotation 15 for finished musical instruments, parts, and accessories, and the conservation impacts thereof. Similar to the case of other studies that we have informed progress for, This study in particular is still in its early stages of development, and the Secretariat also proposes next steps to allow for the Plants Committee to provide their technical and scientific views. So the Secretariat would propose to circulate the preliminary findings once available for consideration of the Plants Committee, allowing for sufficient time for the comments ahead of the documentation deadline for SC78. With the feedback received from the Plants Committee, the Secretariat would then finalize the report and present it for consideration by the Standing Committee at SC78, including reflections on the status of the implementation of decisions 18.321, Rep. Cop 19, and decisions 18.322, Rep. Cop 19. I would also like to highlight that the development of the study is possible thanks to the financial contribution of the Netherlands, and the Secretariat would also like to express its appreciation for this support. So with this, Madam Chair, the Plants Committee is invited to provide feedback on the progress reported in the document and to consider the proposed approach reflected in paragraphs 9 and 12 of the document, to provide an opportunity to the members of the Plants Committee for providing their views ahead of the 78th meeting of the Standing Committee. Thank you.
Je remercie.
I would like to thank the Secretariat for that presentation, and would like to invite members of the Plant Committee to take the floor in order to comment on this document and the implementation of decisions 18.321, Rev. Cop 19, as well as the approach outlined in paragraphs 9 and 10. The floor is open.
La région Amérique du Nord.
North America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The North American region thanks the Secretariat for the update on this work. With regard to the proposed next steps, the North American region appreciates the approach suggested to allow opportunity for the Plants Committee to provide their advice on the preliminary findings. We understand that in practice, this would involve circulating preliminary findings to the members of the Plants Committee who would provide their reflections. In the interest of transparency, we would suggest the Secretariat also issue a notification to note the preliminary findings have been shared with the committee. This would serve the additional function of alerting parties that may wish to identify their interest in providing their own technical views to their regional member on the Plants Committee for his or her consideration. The region suggests that ensuring transparency and good opportunity for a fulsome technical review will greatly help facilitate the subsequent Standing Committee consideration. We are always very mindful of the Standing Committee's heavy agenda. Our suggestion to issue a notification would apply to other documents where a postal review is being proposed, and this would include PC 27 document 12 on CITES and forests, which was discussed earlier today. And finally, the North American region notes that the final terms of reference for the project were not included in the document. I acknowledge and thank the Secretariat for pointing me to a UN website where these terms of reference were posted. But we think it would be helpful also to post them as an information document or elsewhere on the CITES website where parties can readily locate them. Thank you, Chair.
Je remercie.
I would like to thank the North America representative. Would anyone else like to take the floor Members of the Plants Committee? Africa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Africa region thanks the Secretariat for preparation of the document PC 27.55 on Annotation 15. We thank also and acknowledge the financial contribution in this study. The Africa region aligns with North America on the comments which have been provided recently. We also request for wider consultation to range states of which this annotation is covering to improve the findings so that we can have findings which cover the different range states of who are affected by this annotation 15. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Merci.
I would like to thank the representative of Africa. Are there any further requests for the floor? Observer parties and observers, you have the floor.
Ligue American Orchestra, vous avez la parole.
League of American Orchestras, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to very briefly comment on behalf of musical instruments stakeholders. We thank the Secretariat for the preparation of Doc 35 and the update on plans for the study of Annotation 15. The revisions to Annotation 15 adopted at the 18th Conference of the Parties have substantially supported non-commercial and commercial cross-border movement of finished musical instruments, while relieving CITES management authorities of unnecessary permit burdens. And with the implementation of revised Annotation 15, confidence in musical instrument trade and in the effectiveness of CITES has been significantly restored across the music sector. The terms of reference for the study as outlined in PC 26.37 called for supply chain stakeholder and expert consultations. And we take note of the Secretariat's intention to circulate the report's preliminary findings prior to its finalization for the document deadline for the 78th meeting of the Standing Committee. We appreciate the North American representative's request for issuing a notification for that process, encouraging transparency. As the Secretariat and the parties take further action to implement the decisions on Annotation 15 and the related study, musical instrument stakeholders stand ready to partner to achieve outcomes that conserve the species while facilitating ongoing trade and cultural activity involving musical instruments. Thank you.
I would like to thank you for that statement. The floor is open.
Merci.
We have come to the end of our consideration of agenda item 35. The Plants Committee has taken account of the recommendations made with respect to Decision 18321, Rev COP 19, and approves the approach enshrined in paragraphs 9 and 10. Plants Committee members will have the opportunity to provide their scientific or technical advice on the preliminary findings ahead of the Secretariat's reporting to the Standing Committee. And invite the Secretariat to issue a notification to parties informing them that preliminary results have been transmitted to Plants Committee members. Parties are invited to share their comments with their regional representatives. Could I ask you if these conclusions of our discussions are acceptable?
Je ne vois pas.
I do not see any objections, which means that we can conclude our discussions of this particular agenda item.
Le document
PC 27, document 28, on products continuing specimens of Appendix 2 listed orchids, is our next agenda item. I would like to invite the Secretariat to introduce the document. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Document PC 27, Doc 28, presents progress in the implementation of Decision 19246. Regarding the Decision 19246A on international trade in edible orchids, we are reporting on outcomes of Standing Committee discussions on this matter and responses received to Notification 2024/13 that was published on request of the Plants and Standing Committees to gather additional information on trade volumes, manuals and regulations relating to trade in tuberous orchids and enforcement challenges. Responses are compiled in Annex 2 to the document. Paragraphs 7 to 13 summarize all available information, including information on trade volumes. Paragraphs 14 and 15 propose a possible way forward based on suggestions received from parties in response to the notification. Regarding Decision 19246B on an overview of Appendix 2 orchid taxa that are particularly affected by wild harvest for international trade, the Secretariat has received external funding to implement the study with the TORs reflected in Annex 1 of the document. Annex 3 contains draft decision for the consideration of the committee to continue the work on both of these aspects in the next intersessional cycle. Based on the preceding, the Plants Committee is invited to consider the synthesis of available information in paragraphs 7 to 13, the Secretariat reflections on a possible way forward as contained in paragraphs 14 and 15, B, note the terms of reference for the study mandated under Decision 19246 in Annex 1 to the present document, C, consider the proposed draft decisions contained in Annex 3 to the present document, and D, formulate recommendations for the consideration of the Standing Committee as appropriate. Thank you.
I would like to thank the Secretariat for introducing document 28. Committee members, the floor is open. Particularly with respect to the draft decisions in Annex 3. Asia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asian region thanks the Secretary for undertaking the study and in particular to carry out the complex task in the face of a huge workload. With regard to the study plan, in paragraph C, the first paragraph C of draft decision 20.BB in Annex 3 of the present document, I consulted with our orchid expert who said that tuberous orchids may include around 50 genera and more than 2,000 species. So as far as I know, the need for this work teams comes from the impact of trade in two main food products of orchids, which has been raised many years ago, but has not been well addressed. So yeah, please correct me if I'm misunderstood. And it might be more operational based on the study on the table to specify general and hotspots identified and to explore how to provide support and guidance to concerned parties to strengthen their capacity to manage and conserve the Appendix 2 listed orchids affected by illegal international trade, mainly in Salop and Chikanda. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I thank the representative of the Asia region. Do we have any further requests for the floor?
La région Amérique du Nord.
North America region.
Revising the proposed draft decisions 20.AA, 20.BB, and 20.DD in the annex to this document to focus the study on Appendix 2 tuberous orchid taxa in international trade, to better understand the nature and conservation impacts of the trade on wild populations. The recommendations to the draft decisions are as follows, noting that I have also sent this text to the Secretariat. So in 20.AA, it reads, parties are encouraged to enhance their efforts to regulate the trade in tuberous orchids as required under the convention, and to combat illegal trade in tuberous orchids, in particular by compiling and exchanging information, making non-detriment findings, and then here's the new text, and legal acquisition findings. And the rest of that paragraph doesn't change. Then in decision 20.BB, subparagraph C and subparagraph little I, it would read, compile identification tools and methods for specimens of tuberous orchids that are in international trade, comma, as well as to distinguish lookalike specimens, comma, and the new text would be, in consultation with the Plants Committee, develop an identification guide to assist parties in applying these. Directly following this subparagraph little I, we propose a new subparagraph, which would read, identify implementation challenges and capacity needs of parties to regulate international trade in Appendix 2 listed tuberous orchids. The subparagraph little Roman numeral 3 would then follow. Upon request, provide support to key exporting range states and other key exporting states of tuberous orchids to carry out non-detriment findings for tuberous orchids in consultation with the Plants Committee. Finally, for decision 20.CC, we suggest adding a new subparagraph which would follow subparagraph A. And the new subparagraph reads, provide inputs to the Secretariat when developing an identification guide and when providing support to carry out non-detriment findings for tuberous orchids resulting from the implementation of Decision 20.BB, subparagraph C, subparagraph Roman numeral 1 and Roman numeral 3. Thank you, Chair.
Merci aux représentants.
I thank the representative of the North America region. Do we have any other request for the floor?
Royaume-Uni.
United Kingdom.
Thank you, Chair, and to the Secretariat for the update. In relation to this agenda item, we would like to bring attention to Information Document 12, which contains an update from the Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew, on the assessed extinction risk of 43 tuberous orchids from southern Africa, which are used to produce Tukanda. Additionally, the information document details a new methodology developed for extinction risk predictions for plants, which could be considered as a source of information for Activity 2 of the study outlined in Annex 1, if appropriate. Regarding PC 27, Document 28, we are supportive of the way forward outlined in paragraphs 14 and 15, and we would like to propose minor amendments to draft decisions 20AA in Annex 3. To note, we have shared this text with the Secretariat, and I am going to include the addition that we just heard from the representative from North America. So 20AA would read, parties are encouraged to enhance their efforts to regulate the trade in tuberous orchids as required under the Convention and to combat illegal trade in tuberous orchids, in particular by raising awareness with relevant stakeholders, making non-detriment findings and legal acquisition findings for tuberous orchids, building enforcement capacity and enhancing cooperation across borders with a focus on combating illegal trade in edible orchids, including modus operandi of trade networks, species identification, and the development or update of risk profiles. Thank you.
Merci à la
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, Madam Chair. China appreciates the Secretariat's efforts in preparing this document. This document reports the progress made regarding Decision 19.246 to 19.248 adopted by COP19 and the recommendations of PC 26, which focus on studying international trade in edible orchids, developing identification manuals for tuberous orchids, addressing the need for red list assessments, and understanding the regional differences in the trade of tuberous orchids, etc. Therefore, the Secretariat published a notification to the parties 2024/13 to invite parties to respond to a questionnaire and provide information on the extent of trade in tuberous orchids, regulatory materials, enforcement challenges, other trade and capacity building issues. China did not reply to the questionnaire due to the confusion about the scope of the questionnaire, whether it covers edible orchids or tuberous orchids, as they refer to two different groups of orchids which involve a large number of species. However, China is surprised that one independent expert from China responded to the questionnaire, as shown in Annex 2 of PC 27.28. The name and background of the information of the expert are not disclosed in the document, and China is concerned about the reliability and accuracy of the information provided by the anonymous independent expert and would like to clarify the following aspects regarding Annex 2 of Doc 28. First, China would like to highlight two orchid species mentioned in Item A of the expert's response, Calanthe alismifolia and Gynardenia latifolia, as the nomenclature issues of these two orchid species are still being debated by botanists. China believes that Calanthe alismifolia, spelled as M-A-E in the middle, is a synonym of Calanthe alismifolia, spelled as M-I in the middle, and Gynardenia california is an invalid name that may refer to Gynardenia conopsy variety lentifolia. China believes further verification is required to ascertain which 2 species the expert actually referred to. Second, among the 13 orchid species that were listed in Item A regarding legal harvest, blanket, wild, or assisted production submitted by the independent expert, China recognized 9 species under the genera Calanthe and Epipetus are herbs that are traditionally believed to have bitter and cold properties and are not considered to be edible in China. Third, among the 7 species listed in Item E on illegal harvest and trade, blanket domestic, China would like to clarify that the 5 species of Capipedium are not consumed as medicinal or edible orchids in China. Also, Capipedium species are indeed not tuberous orchids. Last but not least, China noted a statement in paragraph 9 of Doc 28 saying some Chinese vendors claimed to have the capacity to produce more than 10,000 kilograms of salad powder per month. And the Secretariat also believed that these wholesale products appear to be largely derived from Dendrobium species. China would like to clarify that Dendrobium species are not tuberous orchids and believe the large production should have come from artificial propagation. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Je remercie la représentante.
I thank the representative of China for the statement. Do we have any further request for the floor? Observer parties? Mexico, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'd like to request for a minor correction in the document, as mentioned in paragraphs 6 and 11. Mexico has a risk assessment of the species Abenaria noventira. However, in the annex are responses to the questionnaire on page 18 of the document. By error, we marked the box 1, so we would be grateful if note could be taken that we should have noted the box C, since we have that risk assessment.
Merci à la représentante de la région.
I thank the representative of Mexico. We take note of the minor modification. I see no further request for the floor, and I will come back to the representative for North America region to request some clarification on the proposal for amendment which was made in particular in the draft decision 20BB in paragraph C, and the new paragraph I, since it is mentioned that it brings support to the main range states and to the other states for tuberous orchids in consultation with the Plants Committee, so III. So how do you think this can be specifically done in Roman 3 upon request to provide support to key exporting range states and so forth?
Just to clarify, are you asking about the specific text that I had suggested, or are you asking more about the content behind the text?
Oui.
Yes. On the content and the intention behind the text, how it would be done.
The ID guide is fine because I have a mandate.
Okay, so I can ask you. Ok. Représentant de la...
Representative of North America region, you have the floor.
Yes, sorry for the delay. So with respect to decision 20.BB, subparagraph 3, subparagraph Roman numeral 3, given that we inserted a new paragraph just before that, we added the text in consultation with the Plants Committee. So this subparagraph is about, upon request, provide support to key exporting range states and other key exporting states of tuberous orchids to carry out non-detriment findings for tuberous orchids. So the consultation with Plants Committee could concern expertise that the Plants Committee might have to provide such support to the range states. I think that was the general intent.
Représentant de la région du Nord, vous...
Representative of North America, would you like to add to what you were saying?
Just adding to what I just said, this would be specifically with respect to carrying out non-detriment findings for tuberous orchids. It would not be specifically referring to capacity building broadly.
Dans ces conditions,
So, in these conditions, would you accept that the consultation be made with the relevant members of the Plants Committee and not the Plants Committee as a whole?
vous avez la parole.
You have the floor.
Yes, that would be reasonable. Thank you.
Je vous remercie.
I thank you.
Nous avons demande de parole de la...
We have a request for the floor from Europe region.
Thank you, Chair. Just with regard to some of the comments by China and reading back on some of the recommendations, I suggest that it started with edible orchids, that anywhere it says tuberous orchids, that we put in edible tuberous orchids, and I think that would help a lot just with terminology and standardization, throughout. Thank you.
Je remercie la représentante.
I thank the representative for the Europe region. I had a request for the floor from the United States of America. Do you wish to take the floor now?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We just wanted to follow up briefly on the recommendation from the representative for North America with regard to the assistance in making non-detriment findings. Our region's suggestion had simply been in the context of ensuring that appropriate expertise was engaged in that assistance. And so that was, our thinking was that the Secretariat could inquire with the Plants Committee to see if there is expertise amongst the committee members or the regions for assisting the Secretariat with that task. Thank you.
Merci à la représentante.
I thank the representative of the USA, and so what was added just now should answer your concerns. Thank you.
Alors, nous allons conclure.
So we shall conclude on.
Je reviens vers vous après consultation.
I'll come back to you after brief consultations.
Je m'adresse.
So,
Je m'adresse.
I will now speak to the representative of the United Kingdom, who, in the amendment of the draft decision 20AA, added the following: to share information on the progress to the Plants Committee as appropriate, and decision 20AA is here. Would you like the parties to submit the report to the Plants Committee?
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to clarify. I had, when I was understanding the additions from the representative from North America, I had wondered if this had been covered, but I am happy to add at the end of 20AA the additional wording and report progress to Plants Committee as appropriate. Thank you.
Justement,
Yes. So the question is, how specifically will that be possible? That there be a report made by the parties to the Plants Committee at each occasion? We think that we could remove that addition.
merci.
Thank you.
So. Ok. En raison des différents.
Because of the various amendments that we have had to these draft decisions, I will request the Secretariat to read the new draft decisions. I give the floor to the Secretariat.
So, Decision 20AA directed to parties. Parties are encouraged to enhance their efforts to regulate the trade in edible tuberous orchids as required under the Convention and to combat illegal trade in edible tuberous orchids, in particular by raising awareness with relevant stakeholders, making non-detriment findings and legal acquisition findings for edible tuberous orchids, building enforcement capacity and enhancing cooperation across borders with a focus on combating illegal trade in edible tuberous orchids, including modus operandi of trade networks, species identification and the development or update of risk profiles, and to report progress to the Plants Committee as appropriate. Sorry, did I miss something? Sorry, I had not yet deleted the last aspect. So the sentence stops with update of risk profiles, full stop. And Decision 20BB directed to the Secretariat. The Secretariat shall A, subject to availability of external resources, consult with parties and stakeholders and undertake a study to compile an overview of Appendix 2 orchid taxa that are particularly affected by wild harvest of Appendix 2 listed orchid taxa for international trade to inform the following. I, the conservation impacts of exempting artificially propagated Appendix 2 listed orchid taxa from CITES regulations, including as articulated in footnote annotation P3 of the CITES appendices, including identification challenges and lookalike issues. I, the conservation impacts of exempting derivatives and or finished products of certain Appendix 2 listed orchids taxa from CITES regulations through amendments to annotation number 4. And B, present the study and formulate recommendations for consideration at the 28th meeting of the Plants Committee. And C, compile identification tools and methods for specimens of edible tuberous orchids that are in international trade, as well as to distinguish lookalike specimen and, in consultation with the Plants Committee, develop an identification guide to assist parties in applying these. I, identify implementation challenges and capacity needs of parties to regulate international trade in Appendix 2 listed edible tuberous orchids. I, upon request, provide support to key exporting range states and other key exporting states of tuberous edible orchids to carry out non-detriment findings for edible tuberous orchids in consultation with the relevant members of the Plants Committee. And 4I, upon request, support parties with the implementation of Decision 20AA by including illegal trade in edible tuberous orchids in ongoing activities in the International Consortium of Combating Wildlife Crime or through other appropriate means. And D, report its findings and recommendations to the Standing Committee. Decision 20CC to the Plants Committee. The Plants Committee shall consider the report and the Secretariat recommendations in response to Decision 20BB, paragraph A, and provide inputs to the Secretariat when developing an identification guide and when providing support to carry out non-detriment findings for edible tuberous orchids, resulting from the implementation of Decision 20BB, CI and III, and report its recommendations to the Conference of the Parties as appropriate. Full stop. Thanks.
Merci.
I would like to thank the Secretariat for that. We are now going to wrap up our discussions of this agenda item. The Plants Committee agrees with the recommendations in paragraph 19 of document PC 28. That is to say, the Plants Committee has considered the information available in paragraph 7 to 13, as well as a possible way forward as contained in paragraphs 14 and 15, and note the terms of reference for the study mandated under Decision 19246 in Annex 1 to the present document, and adopted draft decisions in Annex 3 to the present document as amended during the meeting, and formulated recommendations for the consideration of the Standing Committee. Thank you.
Donc, nous allons...
It's noon. We're going to stop here. And this afternoon, we will resume with the following item on our agenda, document 29. However, I would like to give the floor to the Secretary General, who has an announcement to make. You have the floor, Madam.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Just to transmit a message from our hosts, the Swiss government is generously inviting all of you to a reception on Saturday at 6 p.m. at the Botanical Gardens. So please, hopefully you will still be here in Geneva and be able to join us, and we hope for good weather. Thank you so much.